Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. So, to you. And I don't know what you're going to do with it, but I don't know. We can take it to the bank. I can only do this program in one language, as it turns out. Everyone amazed at watching Philip Crowther, AP reporter, stand-up TV AP reporter for, I guess, covering the Ukrainian situation in at least 6 languages. I saw this last night, although I saw it actually, I think, being circulated. Might have been being circulated by Philip Crowther himself, just sort of, I don't know whether he was showcasing his talents or what, but it got picked up and passed around by a bunch of other people who were passing it around. So I guess it's funny, and they were like legitimately passing it around like, wow, look at this guy. And, well, it shows what a bit of self-promotion can do for you. It's a great idea. I don't know whether I prefer seeing him tweeted around and like, let's give credit to the original person, or whether it's better to just watch other people give him the accolades he deserves. I wonder if he might come back to the United States and become our president someday. He's so smart. Remember when we were all super impressed when Pete Buttigieg turned out to be at least be able to read in several languages. I don't know how conversant he was in them, but a polyglot himself. This guy, very impressive. And I saw his video. I think it's pinned to the top of his Twitter feed at the moment if you want to go and take a look. But it was just really interesting, and it described, by the way, named all the languages. I don't know if I could have picked them all out. He reports, though, from Ukraine, from Kiev, which he calls Kiev, so, you know. He ain't that smart or up to date on the languages. He doesn't speak Ukrainian. So, neither do I. But anyway, he reported in English, and then basically told the same story, essentially. It sounded like, who knows, in, well, Luxembourgish, which I didn't even realize was a language unto itself, but I don't know whether that's just a dialect of German, or a mix of German and French in a weird way, like, because where they are, Luxembourg. That does happen. But at any rate, Luxembourgish listed as a individual language. And by the way, who invests the time in learning to speak Luxembourgish besides the Luxembourgians, Luxembourgers? I don't know. And even they maybe being from Luxembourg is like an automatic thing. You're going to be a polyglot to begin with. You'll speak Luxembourgish, probably also German and French, and everybody teaches their kids to speak English these days. But he reported in Luxembourgish, English, French, and German, as to be expected, but also in Spanish and Portuguese, which are, somewhat related. And so, you can see your way from stepping stone to stepping stone, certainly, but being able to do stand-up news reporting in all 6 languages pretty seamlessly was pretty cool. Plus, he kept all the microphones straight. He just kept switching microphones and reporting for different stations in different countries. So very interesting, and he would have been a better president by far, I'm sure, than Doter J. Trump. Biden doing pretty well, speaking only English, I think, but maybe he's got another language up his sleeve somewhere. But all very fun and impressive. But okay, anyway, he's not going to be able to dig us out of everything. And he's right there in Ukraine, and he hasn't solved that. So how smart could he really be? All right, the Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Bill knows it's just in English here, but you can translate it if you want. Should run it. You know what? I should take it and run it through Google Translate. Well, then I would have a hard time reading it, too. I don't have an accent to read in some of these languages. Does Google Translate do Luxembourgish? I really had no idea about that as a language. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Due to the escalating situation everywhere, Kagro X, how would that be translated, will be in full news mode today and thus unable to wish you a happy Eastern Orthodox President's Day. True, and I can do it in 1 languages as well. We regret the inconvenience. Or Inconveniencekenstein, it's thick and legal. That's Luxembourgish for you. I hope there are no irritable Luxembourgers listening to the show. I would Google I guess I could Google, what do you call people from Luxembourg? bastards. But I don't even know what's the word for. There's a word in English and maybe Luxembourgish for that word that you use to refer to people from a certain country, and I don't know what that word is, and I forget, and maybe you know it. And if you do, text it, tweet it to me here, and use the KITM hashtag, and then look up what they call Luxembourgers, so we can stop insulting the poor guys and get down to business. All right, let's see what we've got on tap here for today. There's an awful lot, and a lot to get to. What did I see this morning? Oh yeah, I'll go to Twitter. That's the answer to what I saw this morning. Like an editor on his way to work, you will hear the news that I see in the morning. And let's see. Oh, well, a gun story sent to us by SFDB that looks somewhat interesting. I'm actually curious about investigating about how this went down exactly. I couldn't classify it as a gun fail, but I did decide to retweet it anyway. Long story short, from SFDB, just in case you're wondering, a Utah gunslinger brandishes a gun at McDonald's employees after receiving the wrong food order at the drive-thru, which, by the way, you can usually correct by telling them, hey, I've got the wrong food order. Can I get the right food order? I should have made a category for this. I mean, it's not gun fail, because usually they don't fire the gun. Sometimes they do. But there are, I would imagine, hundreds of incidents that I've seen over the years and haven't cataloged because I'm not in the business of cataloging these things. But people are brandishing guns at fast food drive-thrus all the time over wrong food orders, and I just have never been that irate about things. And, you know, I've had some egregious mistakes made. That's why there's cheese on this hamburger. And I can't understand why you've done that, and it makes me angry. Mom tweets the answer. Or texts the answer. Luxembourgish. They are Luxembourgish, or they speak Luxembourgish, or both. Luxembourganian. I don't know. There's all sorts of fancy things we could be calling, but probably So the Luxembourgish people. But what's one of them? Like, are they a Luxembourger? With cheese? Royale, perhaps? I don't know. Anyway, damn. Luxembourg. Does Liechtenstein have its own language as well? I mean, it's kind of tiny. I just imagine they speak German here. But I just thought they spoke German in Luxembourg. And French, yeah, but, you know, like Belgians who speak, I thought, French. I know they can tell the difference between Belgian French and French, and Canadian French, for that matter. But the Belgians not just... All right, well, whatever. Okay, so that's what we call them, Luxembourgish. All right, so the whole country... I've insulted, or maybe I got it right. Who cares? I'm going to fight the whole country. I could probably do it, too. Would you rather fight one Luxembourg or a dozen Liechtensteins? I don't know. All right. I'm sorry to Luxembourg for a lot of things. I wish you good luck, good health, more elevation. Luxembourger is less preferred. That's they're gradations. You Luxembourgers are lucky I recognize you at all. All right. There's nothing wrong with Luxembourg. It's a beautiful place that I don't think I've actually been to. Benelux countries, you know, terrific. We love them all. And they're the Lux. And they put the Lux in Benelux. So anyway, sorry about that. You're lucky you're not getting shot at McDonald's. This is the basic reality of it. So count your blessings. Anyway, Utah gunslinger, I'm not done with that guy. He brandished his gun into McDonald's because he got the wrong food order. Which, I mean, there are some things, like if you gave me a Shamrock Shake, I might consider brandishing a weapon at you. But I'd probably let it go and say, hey, you got the wrong order. But there's more. He then gives his 4-year-old son the gun and instructs him to shoot at police when they arrive, and he does. That's SFDB's encapsulation of the story. Now I'm just too intrigued. It's actually from Luxembourg and not Utah. I am surprised by that. But, okay. Well, anyway, he was driving through looking for a Luxembourger with cheese, and he got the wrong order. And I don't want to read all the details, but this is Utah. I would have expected this in Florida or Texas, but Utah is a bit of a surprise. Where in Utah? Obviously the worst part of Utah. I don't know where it is. I'm guessing Salt Lake City, which is a fine part of Utah, I'm sure. They just give the address. So local Utahns, I know, will know perhaps where the McDonald's is, 400 West and 7200 South. It's at both of those places. That's the weird way they give those addresses in Midvale. Okay, so either that's the town or that's the section of Salt Lake City. I don't know. Luxembourg invaded it, and I've lost track of things. So I'm curious, like, what was wrong with the order? The police did not look into that. They just simply summarize it by saying that the order was wrong, and that should be sufficient. Dainu. That's all you need to know. Officers ordered him several times to get out of the vehicle, but the man didn't comply. They were able to pull the man from the car, but then an officer noticed that a gun was sticking out of an open door of the vehicle. The officer pushed the gun away, and then the gun went off, burning the officer's arm as it did so. Cutler said, that's interesting. They won't even, say a 4-year-old shot me. But the car's tinted windows made it difficult to see inside, but the officer saw that the person who had pulled the trigger was a 4-year-old boy. The officer yelled, "Kid, kid, kid." Not like, "Kid, did you shoot the officer?" But rather, "It's a kid, don't shoot," which is great that they have that kind of, usually they yell, "Gun, gun, gun," and they all just fire in the direction of the gun. But they were able to see it was a kid, and that was to, it says here, alert the officers at the scene, preventing a horrific tragedy. It's an horrific tragedy, but I won't hold it against the Salt Lake Tribune for that. Times are changing. Anyway, a 3-year-old girl was also in the back seat, and she had a cutlass and a cannon. It was a pirate car. Now, she didn't have anything, just unusual situation, and I'm excited about it. The round struck an awning on the restaurant. That's very quaint. They have awnings at this nice McDonald's. A witness told police that the man had instructed his son to pull the trigger. Now, who witnessed that and did nothing? I'd like to know. "I'm shook," Cutler said of the situation. Cutler is, I think, one of the, it's Sergeant Melody Cutler with the Unified Police Department. So she's shook, Melody is, and I don't blame her. In a statement, Sheriff Rosie Rivera. Really? It's a very pleasant-sounding town. I like it. Except for the gunplay. "Officers are here to protect and serve, and we are beyond belief that something like," and then it's bracketed, "like this could happen." And now I wonder, what word is that substituting for? Something like, did she choke on the word and swallow the this? Or say something else? Something like that could happen, maybe? And they said, well, that's improper English. We're going to change it to this. Or did she say, the officers are here to protect and serve, and it's beyond belief that something like this MF and S could happen? Oh, we'll just shorten that to this. I have no idea. This Luxembourgist a-hole in the car here has pulled this. Anyway, the man is in custody, and the 4-year-old boy is with family members who gave him more guns, I would guess. Does that kid even know what he did, Cutler said? Does he understand the realities of all this? Police described the officer's burn as minor and said the case remains under investigation. Maybe later we'll find out what the order was. And what was the big problem? The fries the wrong size, cheese on the burger, I didn't order a Big Mac, you gave me the wrong soda. I'm very curious to find that out. What would drive somebody to do this sort of thing? But journalism. Kids today, if they're not shooting at cops at McDonald's, they're writing crappy articles. Nothing wrong with the article. Don't feel bad. Colby Peterson. If you needed something to feel bad about having the name Colby spelled Kolbie. But in Utah, probably nobody notices. Anyway, good morning to everyone I'm insulting. I've got you all covered here today. There's actual news and stuff. We could get to that, but I'm having fun. Before we find out what danger we're in with Joan McCarter, who will make it fun, no doubt, as well. I will update you on this news. I looked it up. I had to go and look it up. Did we pass a continuing resolution so as to not shut down the government, because there was a deadline of Friday to do that? And I didn't see anybody report. The only way I was able to deal with it, handle it, was, I don't think I saw anybody say the government was shut down. That would have made the news. But zero fanfare for passing the thing, which is probably proper because, One, as Joan has been filling you in, and by the way, I would have to point out, probably one of the very, very few people in any of the media who bother pointing out, by the way, it actually sucks to continue to pass continuing resolutions because, and here we're one of the only people that will tell you this, continuing resolutions, you will recall, are just an extension of the current budget. Whatever we're spending now, can't we all agree that it would be fine to continue to spend that? It's usually just the easiest way to get everyone's approval in a situation where, one senator can blow everything up, right? So you just say, whatever we're spending now, you seem to be okay with. I haven't seen you out protesting anywhere, so why don't we just continue spending it? And Republicans are happy to do that, although they occasionally threaten to block it for various, show-off reasons. But they're generally okay with it, and that's because we're just continuing the budget that they set back under Trump. So it's just more Trump budget. He's out of office and never really was qualified to hold office in the first place. Would likely now, I don't know. I mean, Republicans will never vote to disqualify him from office through, say, the impeachment process, where you'd need 2/3 of the Senate to do it. But I guess it's possible through some other process where you could do it by majority vote. You might be able to get them to just say, we're tired of this guy, so tired that we will bar him from federal office forever, but we will continue the budget that his administration put forth. Although that's chiefly the work of Congress, and perhaps that's why they're okay with it. Okay, so anyway, the other big news today is that I've made this tea and I haven't had any of it, so let's, breaking news, I'm going to have some. Here it goes. I'm sorry there's no way to do that silently and more elegantly. I could mute the microphone for a minute, but then you just hear the mute button clicking instead, and you'd wonder what was going on. And we aim for 100% transparency here. All right. So anyway, yes, they, I guess, continued things. They did, in fact, and I looked it up, and they did another short-term CR, which extends through March 11th. And I'll tell you that so that Joan can focus on fun or exciting things instead. I'm sure there's some detail we'll want to get back to. You may also recall that last Tuesday, Joan said at the time that Marsha Blackburn, senator from Tennessee, was holding up the works, threatening to block the CR unless she got her star turn and got 15 minutes in the media complaining about the crack pipe thing. And then Joan told us quite accurately that in all likelihood the rest of the Republicans would say, listen, we want to get out of here for the weekend. This thing is stupid. We're going to be doing a short-term CR. Nobody's got any real problem with this. Yeah, crack pipes, et cetera, et cetera. You got your time on TV. You made hay out of the crack pipes. Let's all go home. Okay, fine. She agreed to do that. At which point, Marco Rubio was like, I want to have time on TV, too, about the crack pipes. I didn't get a chance to do that. So he objected to the crack pipe thing and said, I am going to take it to the next level. I am going to hold up the CR unless we have a vote on my bill, which is bipartisan because Joe Manchin is going to help me with it, banning the crack pipe stuff. And, same sort of stunt as what's her face from Tennessee. What did I just say her name was? Blackburn. And I don't like these guys. Anyway, so he did his thing, and we had to dispense with the fiction that we were going to dispense with his bill. And he did the whole thing, and he stood there on the floor. I can't believe that you guys are letting this crack pipe thing happen. And instead of voting for my awesome bill, this is outrageous. And everybody just basically said, Rubio, shut up already. I mean, Blackburn already did this thing, so get out of the way. Let's do the CR. No one cares about you. You're not running for president anymore. You're going to try, but, you're hopeless. Just shut up and go away. And he did. He didn't get his vote. And then, okay, fine. I'll vote for the CR. I'm not going to shut down the government. Yeah, we knew it. We knew you never would. Not that you would never join in someone else's thing, but you weren't going to do it all by yourself. Over something so stupid and unoriginal as the crack pipe thing that we all just rejected 10 minutes ago. So everybody said that, brushed him aside. Both Blackburn and Rubio, marginally popular. They're barely tolerated at this point inside the Republican conference. Blackburn more so. She's more normal. Rubio, everybody's just tired of. So even, what's his name? Ted Cruz and Rand Paul didn't try to do anything with the crack pipes at that point. They really just wanted to get out of there and go home. We'll see whether there's any more detail that Joan would like to add to that. But other than that, we'll wander through the other stories that she's working on and catch up with her that way and see what's new in Idaho and whether anybody is shooting at the drive-through staff there and whether they know anything about Luxembourg. Might as well ask around. Okay, so, that's an item that we might add. Let's see, other news from this morning. Yes, I happened to see David Pepper, who's made himself quite a figure on Twitter, commenting on the Ukraine situation, saying that, or asking people, can you imagine that a few years back when Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, needed U.S. help? You all remember where this is going, right? The then president of the United States, Donald Trump, refused to help against Russia, of course, until the man, Zelensky, performed a political favor to help him in his next election. That is, of course, by lying about his opponent. That actually happened. And believe it or not, people have forgotten this or put it in the back of mind anyway. And yeah, so he's basically laying out impeachment number 1 over the Ukraine crisis. And you all remember, can you do us a favor? We're going to send you we'll help you, but you need you to do me a favor first, or do us a favor first. Do America a favor by framing up members of Joe Biden's family so that I can win the next election. Everyone kind of, I don't think anybody here has lost sight of that. However, I thought it would be worth our time to remind people that there was more involved in Ukraine. Can you imagine that a few years before that happened, that when Ukrainians needed help because they had been invaded by Russia, and they sent their then prime minister to Washington, D.C. to speak to the congressional leadership on the Republican side, because they were the majority at the time, and tell them how serious the situation was, how dire the situation was, what the Russian plans in Ukraine were, and that they didn't stop at Ukraine, which we now found out thanks to the crazy-ass speech by Putin yesterday. I mean, I think we all suspected he had these designs, but yesterday he just blurted it all out, that all the former Soviet republics basically still belong to Russia and should be re-annexed, starting with Ukraine, but that basically, I don't think he went through them by name, but everybody was basically supposed to be a part of Russia. Maybe even Luxembourg. We don't know. They're a little far afield, but hey, it's happened before. What's that oblast, that non-contiguous oblast out in the middle of Poland that we have brought up from time to time? Kaliningrad, maybe? That was it? I think that's it. Okay. Well, anyway, he basically said we want to annex all of Eastern Europe and Central Asia all over again. And the Ukrainians knew this. I don't know if they knew the extent of his plans, but they knew of it with respect to Ukraine, but also they knew of a wider plan just to basically undermine Western democracies one by one, even ones that were never part of Russia. And he came to Washington to warn the congressional leadership of this situation. And do you remember that happening? And do you remember that we caught them on tape talking about having been briefed by the Ukrainian prime minister, but that instead they got sidetracked joking about the fact that Trump was Putin's captive, essentially. You remember, this is the infamous discussion in which Kevin McCarthy, who now disavows the whole thing and said it was a joke, said Putin pays Trump. And they all, ha, ha, ha. And anyway, the upshot of that conversation, not only was the original conversation about guess what I learned about what's going on in Ukraine, but all the rest of the Republican leadership was there saying, you know what, I've heard that too, or I even went to Ukraine and I found out, and I'm really concerned, and we should absolutely be doing something. And then half the Republican leadership said, the only people who are paying any attention and doing anything about it is us, the United States, and only because we're driving the foreign policy, not that Obama traitor. And Kathy McMorris Rogers, I think, says, yeah, but we're not. We're not doing anything. We're just really, we're not. So the truth comes out. And then, of course, it also comes out that, well, this would be of grave concern to us here in the United States, except for the fact that it's Putin doing it and that he keeps Trump as a pet. And if we do anything about it, people are going to find out that Trump is a traitor and we might lose the election. So let's all swear to keep this a secret so that we can win the election. Ha ha ha. And besides, let's not talk about Putin paying Trump. And it was all taped, and it came out, and the big upshot of it was, one guy says Putin pays Trump. He might, but that's so crazy. Anyway, never mind, and forget the whole thing about the Republicans saying, we will sacrifice Ukraine on the altar of political gain here in the United States. Then, amazingly, a couple of years later, the head of the Republican Party, by that point, came and sacrificed Ukraine on the altar of political gain. And everybody was like, I've never seen such a thing. What should we do about it? And whatever. I mean, can you imagine if that really happened? Because that actually happened. And by the way, on our way out for the break here, I might as well just add, can you imagine that the great institutionalist Mitch McConnell, when he found out that Obama and the Obama administration's intelligence community had already also found out exactly what was going on in Ukraine and how far Trump and the rest of the Republicans were willing to go to allow them to do it in exchange for help with the election. And he said, we're going to put a stop to this and investigate this and let people know that they're voting for a Russian spy. The great institutionalist Mitch McConnell said, oh, no, you don't. And he launched basically with a threat, what became one of Trump's big lies, that the Obama administration was going to spy on the Trump campaign. Wow.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Gil. Minimal contributor to content, but regular contributor to funding for Kagro in the morning. Let's change things up from David's so very tired plea for your contributions with a plea of my own. If you want to add your voice to the show, do it. Record your own segment using your favorite recording device and send it to David. Read an article and give your opinion. Write your own essay and read that. The sky's the limit. Well, not really. Try to keep it relatively short so David doesn't have to stress about cutting it and hurting your feelings. Join the hallowed ranks of Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter and be part of this somewhat witty deep dive into political topics with unnecessary censoring. Lend your voice to the show by sending it to kagrox@gmail.com. KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here in Luxembourg, I guess. For final clarification, we now go to our chief grammar correspondent, my mom, who finally, one tells me the name, the word I was looking for. Did they say demonym or demonym? I don't know. The demonym or name for a person from Luxembourg is Luxemburger, with Luxembourgish being the adjective and the name of the language. Luxembourgian is a sports car, probably, I think, but is sometimes used as an adjective, but very rarely, because most Luxembourgers, I guess, will kick your ass for saying that. And I don't know how many of them are into that. I'm sure there's some Luxembourgish MMA fighters. I mean, wasn't Jean-Claude Van Damme like Dutch? Van Damme, right? I mean, maybe he was Belgian. I don't know. Where was Van Damme from? Somebody looked that up. Anyway, a Beneluxer, I believe. And so they're not to be trifled with. He will kick your ass and tie you to a windmill. Probably. I don't know. Anyway, so that's the news from Luxembourg. The whole show is going to be Luxembourg. And we're better for it. So, yeah, as I was leaving the room, figuratively, for the break, I don't know if I actually finished up my rant about Mitch McConnell. You all know what he did. I just wanted to remind you of it. And in case anybody is brand new to it, yes, he maybe originated, or maybe, I don't know, he might have been handed this line from the campaign, but he was one of the earliest to float the possibility, anyway, of weaponizing one of the big lies, not just that the election was stolen from him, but that one of the mechanisms of stealing the election from poor Donald Trump was that there was a continued cover-up of Democrats spying on the Trump campaign. For what reason, I don't know. To get early word of something really dumb that he was going to say. We were spying. We just couldn't wait for the next live TV feed from every cable channel that was covering everything he said wherever he went, no matter how dumb or dangerous. But somehow we needed to spy to get on all this. But yes, the intelligence community was probably, they were aware of the situation and were spying on the spies that Russia sent to try and turn Americans into spies. And I don't know whether they ever really thought that they were going to catch Donald Trump's campaign on the other end, or the other side of the table, making spy-like espionage plans to destroy the United States in cooperation with the Russians. But that's what they got. And Mitch McConnell said, if you think I am going to let the Obama administration tell the American people that their intelligence agencies have caught Donald Trump colluding with the Russians to steal the election, you're crazy. If you do that, I'm going to say that you're meddling in the election and spying on the Trump campaign, and then you're going to have all sorts of political trouble, and you'll probably end up losing the election, and it'll be your own fault because you forced me to lie about what you were doing. Then, of course, the Obama administration backed off and decided, well, Hillary Clinton will probably win the election anyway, so no harm done. I can almost forgive them the mistake that they made. And it wasn't, we won't say they didn't make a mistake, but they did. I can almost understand why they made that mistake. And then it didn't even matter because guess what? The Republican machine and all their operatives later on went ahead and did it. It was Mitch McConnell wouldn't help them do it, or not overtly anyway, but he didn't do anything to stop any members of the Senate Republican Conference from joining in gleefully, accusing the Obama administration of having spied on the Trump campaign, and they're still doing it today. Thanks, Mr. Mainstream Institutionalist. I hope you fall on your patio again and dash your brains out on the furniture this time. Okay, just, he's had a long life. Whatever. He's a bastard, and the sooner we're rid of him, the better, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. He's fallen on his patio before. He could do it again. Things are not, I'm sure his balance isn't getting any better. Anyway, how about we switch gears and criticize someone else harshly and hope for their imminent demise? Who, though? Well, it could be Donald Trump. That would be easy enough to do. And on what grounds should we wish for this today? How about Empty Wheel tweeting, as she did very recently at 9 o'clock this morning, that she did 3 posts on Judge Amit Mehta's ruling tossing Trump's motion to dismiss the January 6th lawsuits against him. And that's good news, because the only other item I had on that came from Jennifer Rubin, and I'm just still not really ready to read Jennifer Rubin columns, even though they've been right on point for a long time now, and I'm going to have to get over it at some point. I sometimes do. And when Greg reads them, I'm okay with it. But we might end up back on Jennifer Rubin, because you know what happens sometimes when you read the Marcy Wheeler items. You're like, what? I'm lost. I can tell that something terrible is happening here, but she's speaking in code, and I can't get it. The Washington Post headline for Jennifer Rubin on her opinion pieces: Trump's legal problems are about to get a whole lot worse. We've heard that before, and so it's not a particularly enticing headline. But the reason I picked up on her article was certainly not because I read it ahead of time or anything like that, but because I saw Empty Wheel tweeting about it yesterday and saying, the judge's rulings here are important and of interest. So here's the best I can do for you. We'll start off by reading the posts at Empty Wheel's blog to which she pointed in that tweet, and see if we can make sense out of any number, either 1, 2, or 3, not any number, but any of those 3 numbers of the posts that she said she wrote. The one we're directed to first, and I don't know whether it's the most recent, how Judge Amit Mehta argued it was plausible, that Trump conspired with 2 militias. And I'm going to scroll down and see what other posts. Are these other posts, or are these, I guess I still haven't clicked into them. All right, we're just going to read Empty Wheel's blog today. All right, so here's the one we start with. How Judge Amit Mehta, M-E-H-T-A, argued it plausible that Trump conspired with 2 militias. Ready? As I noted, and you've no doubt heard elsewhere, on Friday, Judge Amit Mehta rejected Trump's motion to dismiss 3 lawsuits against him, along with those of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. This is just the first step in an effort by police and some members of Congress to hold the former president civilly accountable for conspiring to prevent them from certifying the electoral vote on January 6th. All he did was rule the claims, as alleged, were plausible. This is not a ruling that Trump did conspire with 2 militias. Judge Mehta's decision will undoubtedly be appealed by the plaintiffs, the militias, and Trump. But the decision matters because it lays out a framework to understand Trump's actions on January 6th as a conspiracy between himself and 2 militias that played key roles in the insurrection on January 6th. I think to get to this point, what must have happened procedurally is, I know that there are members of Congress suing Trump and members of the police force who were injured suing Trump for his role in inciting the riot. They may be countersuing or may have moved to see these suits dismissed for lack of, a real cause of action, and that it's impossible they would claim, for the plaintiffs in the first suits to establish anything that would lead to civil liability for the defendants in the original suits. They became the plaintiffs, though, in countersuits seeking to block or dismiss the original suits. And the judge says, no, I know you think that there's no way that they can connect you to Trump in a way that would establish civil liability for his role in inciting you. But I actually, having heard the arguments, feel like they have a pretty good shot at doing that, or at least decent enough that I'm going to say no to you now. Now back into Empty Wheel's reporting of it, or discussion of it. It matters, too, because Mehta is not just any judge. He is well respected by all involved. Indeed, some Oath Keeper defendants have explicitly suggested that retaining Mehta as the presiding judge might be worth more than challenging the venue and trying to be removed to some other court. They actually trust, I guess, in his fairness. Mehta's order will carry a good deal of weight with any of his colleagues who might preside over a Trump criminal case, and with the D.C. Circuit. Plus, as the judge presiding over the Oath Keeper conspiracy and a number of other high-profile January 6th cases, he has a far greater understanding of how the day's events unfolded than, say, Chief Judge Beryl Howell, who is presiding over a disproportionate number of trespassing cases. As I'll show in a follow-up, his opinion reflects a far greater understanding of January 6th, including possibly non-public information, than most others have. So, while this decision is nowhere near the last word on whether Trump conspired with 2 militias to attack the Capitol, it is really an important first word. And I guess, I don't know, is this all just one huge long post? Yes, okay. So then she turns to address, it is plausible, or the fact, she says, that it is plausible that Donald Trump entered into a conspiracy with 2 militias. How so? As Judge Mehta laid out, accepting the claims alleged as true, which one must do on motions to dismiss. Again, here, the militias would have been looking to dismiss the lawsuits against Trump that connected the 2 of them. And the job of the judge there is to say, well, if you're looking for us to just dismiss it before trial, the way you do that is you say, all right, let's assume that all the things that the plaintiffs alleged are true. Can you still not make a legal cause of action out of this? Can you still not get any relief? Is there no case stated? If not, then yeah, you dismiss the case. But if you say, well, if what they say is true, then yeah, you got a legal problem, then you go forward. That's all this ruling is. But there was a chance that, judges in this country do that all the time. They roll their eyes. Oh my God, this conspiracy theory is so dumb. Even if you said, yeah, they met with the president beforehand and said, we think you will invoke the Insurrection Act and enable us to, act as law enforcement on your behalf. That's not really a thing you can prosecute them for. Presidents do that all the time, and you can totally get away with it. Well, that wasn't very convincing, and so we said, no, let's have the case be made here. So, as Judge Mehta laid out, accepting the claims alleged as true, there were 5 things that Trump did that made the plaintiff's claim of a conspiracy plausible, not an ironclad lock, but plausible, which is the standard required to reject the motion to dismiss. Okay, so here are the 5 things. 1, they agreed to pursue the goal of disrupting vote certification. The president, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and others pursued the same goal, to disrupt Congress from completing the Electoral College certification on January 6th. Bad. Trump encouraged means of obstructing the vote, and the militias and others carried them out. He knew the respective roles of the conspirators. His was to encourage the use of force and intimidation or threats to thwart the certification from proceeding, and organized groups such as the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers would carry out the required acts. These seem to be quotes from the ruling, too. What else? Trump incited lawbreaking. And another quote, based on these allegations, it is reasonable to infer that before January 6th, the president would have known about the power of his words, and that when asked, some of his supporters would do as he wished. All the things we've been saying. That's at least plausible. Good news. On January 6th, they did so. When he called on them to march to the Capitol, when he set them on foot, I would remind you, some responded, storm the Capitol. Quote, storm the Capitol. Thousands marched down Pennsylvania Avenue as directed, and when some were inside the Capitol, they told officers, quote, we were invited here by the President of the United States, unquote. Trump also called for collective action. That's important. In this, a quote from the ruling. 4th, the president's January 6th rally speech can reasonably be viewed as a call for collective action. The president's regular use of the words we, or the word we, is notable. We, us, and Luxembourgians. Luxembourgarians. Okay. I forgot already what we're supposed to call them. Trump ratified the riot. That's the 5th point here. And now another quote from the judge. And then, around 6 p.m., after law enforcement had cleared the building, the president issued the following tweet. Oh, he's going to pick them apart with the tweets. The tweet was, these are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from the great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. A reasonable observer could read that tweet as ratifying the violence and other illegal acts that took place at the Capitol only hours earlier. Well, goddamn, thank God somebody's finally giving us the latitude to do that. Jeez, it's pretty obvious. Laying out the conspiracy like this, Marcy says, is the easy part. The hard part is finding that the sitting president, and he was often sitting, could be sued, and could be sued substantially for his speech. And it might pose some problems. Next up, the president has no role in certifying the vote count. That we know, but okay. Mehta got there in 3 key moves. The first was dismissing Trump's claim that his actions amounted to fulfilling his duty to take care that the election laws were faithfully executed. That's what he's doing in this suit. He says, you can't hold me liable for it. I'm just trying to make sure. Look, Trump's position is Biden cheated. It was all rigged. These are fake. The real electors are the fake electors, and the fake electors are the real electors. And as president, it's my prerogative to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And if needs be, smear feces on the wall of the Capitol to prevent the real electors from being counted. The real fake ones. And then having the fake ones be counted as real because the pillow guy told me that was probably the case, and I should listen to him. And again, please, feces on the wall. There's a pillow man who used to smoke crack, by the way, and might be interested in one of these free crack pipes. And he says, I should stand everything on its head. But I'm president, and it's up to me. I have that prerogative. And we do make the mistake of lending an awful lot of power to the presidency to do things that are stupid and inexplicable or would otherwise be considered treason or even espionage. But a president of the United States. And it's not easy to become president of the United States. So we don't hand the power to just anyone. But again, we never contemplated a charlatan and an idiot like this. I mean, there just never was one that dumb before. Anyway, so first he dismisses the idea. No. This is not you taking care that election laws are faithfully executed. President Trump argues that these acts fall into two presidential functions. That's in scare quotes. One, the constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That comes from the U.S. Constitution, Article 2, Section 3. Also, President Trump says that he, quote, had an ever-present duty, and he probably did, to ensure, the other kind. He had an ever-present duty to ensure that the election laws were followed, including the certification process. That's from Trump's reply to the initial lawsuit here. Quoting from a law review student note, he says that enforcing election laws is, quote, at the core of the executive branch's duty to faithfully execute the law. Fail that student. At the core of the president's duty is, of course, the responsibility to faithfully execute election law, but that's not what Trump was doing. And you can't just say, by virtue of the fact that he's president, the side he chooses is de facto correct. That's not going to fly. As Mehta notes, Trump's law review student note sees the president's role in enforcing election law to be litigation, not intervening to prevent the actual vote certification. So maybe you don't have to fail the student. You just have to fail the person who read that student note and said, the student note was, you have a duty, if you really and truly believe that the election has been stolen, and that's in question. But if you really and truly believe it, you will litigate that issue. And they did. They litigated it 60 plus times, and they lost every single time because their theory of everything was stupid. Plus, the facts that they alleged weren't real. So it was very unlikely that they were going to be able to win. They were wrong on the law, and their facts were made up. So that doesn't win a lot. But Trump goes further and says, well, the student probably meant that even if we lose all of our litigation, we should just beat the crap out of everybody and execute anybody who says we were wrong. Then we would win. No, then you would have to fail that student. That's a political science essay, sir, not a law studies essay. You just cut that out. Anyway, there's more here. What President Trump omits from that quote, from the law student note, makes his citation grossly misleading. So that's no surprise there. The full quote reads, however, enforcing election laws through litigation strikes at the core of the executive branch's duty to faithfully execute the law. It must therefore belong solely to the executive. And I guess our law student here is by the name of Lightsey, Lightsey, including through litigation completely changes the meaning of the sentence. The president can enforce election laws through litigation initiated by the Department of Justice or the Federal Election Commission, agencies over which he has appointment authority. The case the Lightsey note cites, Buckley versus Vallejo, like the big election law Supreme Court case, makes that clear. A lawsuit is the ultimate remedy for a breach of the law, and it is to the president and not to the Congress that the Constitution entrusts the responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. This case, of course, does not involve litigation to enforce federal election laws, and so the president's reliance on the Lightsey note is inapt. Yeah, it is an election case, but it doesn't have anything to do with the enforcement of federal election laws. As I recall, it was the big campaign contribution limitations case, and whether or not you could enforce across the board limitations or caps on spending by the campaigns, et cetera, et cetera. But my recollection may be less than perfect after all these years. Anyway, Marcy jumps back here and says, this comment has further implications because Trump's campaign personally tried to sue to overturn the election results, but failed in spectacular fashion, as we mentioned, and because Trump's efforts to force the DOJ to launch such suits failed. Mehta mentions neither of these details, but they do matter in understanding Trump's actions. Yay, that's why we brought them up. Outside of such a litigation, Mehta notes, the Constitution assigns the president no role in certifying the vote count. And then a quote from Mehta's ruling here. A sitting president has no expressly identified duty to faithfully execute the laws surrounding the certification of the Electoral College. So perhaps it is not surprising that President Trump does not identify any law relating to the certification that he was purportedly executing through his tweets and the January 6th rally speech. Marcy says the other legal duties involved in certifying election results are explicitly assigned to other parties, including a co-equal branch of government. Who might that be? And then more quotes here. President Trump cites no constitutional provision or federal statute that grants or vests in the president or the executive branch at all any power or duty with respect to certification of the Electoral College vote, at least in the manner in which he conceives it. That is because there is none. The Constitution spells out the respective responsibilities of various actors in the election of the president. The Constitution provides that the states are to select electors who will cast votes for president and vice president, and the electors transmit a tally of those votes to the president of the Senate. The president of the Senate, in the presence of the House and Senate, shall open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. A sitting president is prescribed no role. The Electoral Count Act, which we all know about, fills in procedural details not addressed in the Constitution, but it too prescribes no role for a sitting president. This language closely models language that DOJ is using in obstruction cases to establish that the vote certification was an official proceeding. Then President Trump, the next section says, was not speaking as president about those matters of public concern. Mehta then dismisses Trump's claim that he's immune from suit because his January 6th speech simply amounted to him in the role of president commenting on matters of public concern. Now, he bases his approach on a D.C. Circuit case that ruled that any claim of immunity must be rooted in the actual duties of the office. He's the biggest duty of the office, of course, but the other duties involved are, well, let's go back to the judge here. Rather than apply the parties' proffered categorical rules to the immunity question, the court thinks the better course is to evaluate the defense on the specific facts alleged and, based on those facts, determine whether President Trump's words were spoken in furtherance of a presidential function. That is the approach that the D.C. Circuit took in Banneker Ventures, LLC versus Graham, a case in which then board member of the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority, Jim Graham, asserted absolute immunity from a suit accusing him of improperly interfering with the developer's ultimately unsuccessful project negotiations with the authority. The appropriate focus, that court wrote, is on the relationship between the act complained of and the corresponding matters committed by law to the official's control or supervision. The court noted that one way that one way that an official acts manifestly beyond his authority is through the use of manifestly excessive means, even if he does so in the conduct of duties otherwise within his official purview. How about that? The court emphasized that the burden of establishing immunity rests on the official claiming it. Marcy notes, using that as a framework and spending a paragraph admitting that consideration of a president's role is far more weighty matter, Mehta holds that it is not within the scope of the president's duties to ensure his own incumbency, and says so this way. In undertaking this analysis, the court starts from the following premise, as to which there should be no dispute. The office of the president has no preference for who occupies it. The Article 2 of the Constitution, which defines the powers and duties of the president, is agnostic as to whether a sitting president is elected to a new term. So, too, is federal statutory law. A function of the presidency, therefore, is not to secure or perpetuate incumbency. That should be fairly obvious. He goes allegation by allegation, showing that Trump's alleged actions served to ensure his own incumbency, including this key paragraph laying out the purpose of the rally itself. We'll do this one and then wrap up, I think. That, too, was the purpose of the January 6th rally. The judge writes, President Trump invited people to Washington, D.C. for the event. In a tweet referencing the January 6th rally, he encouraged his followers to, quote, never give up. On the eve of the January 6th rally, the president's tweets turned to Vice President Pence. The president expressed the view that the vice president had the power as president of the Senate to reject states' electoral college certifications and return them to be recertified. The clear purpose of such recertification would be to allow electoral college votes to be recast in his favor. All Mike Pence has to do is send them back to the states, and we win. These tweets were not official acts, but issued to help him, quote, win. That is to say, they were campaign acts. Via this approach, then, Mehta arrives precisely where DOJ did, in making a Hatch Act argument that campaigning is not among the duties of any federal employee via different means. It is not the duty of the president to remain president, but that's what Trump was doing in all the alleged acts. And then, I think, finally, Trump incited violence and also ordered his followers to do something unauthorized. Mehta ultimately judges that Trump's speech on January 6 meets the Brandenburg test for incitement. But before he gets there, he makes another important point. It was Trump's campaign's idea, and he was personally involved in sending people on an unpermitted march to the Capitol. Oh, dear. President Trump also allegedly participated directly in the planning, says Judge Mehta. He was involved in decision-making about the speaking lineup and the music selection. And critically, to the surprise of rally organizers, President Trump and his campaign proposed that the rally include a march to the Capitol, even though the permit they obtained did not allow for one. The president ended his speech. Oops, we've got to get the music ready here. The president ended his speech by telling the crowd, ready? That we fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Almost immediately after these words, he called on rally-goers to march to the Capitol and give pride and boldness to reluctant lawmakers to take back our country. Importantly, it was the president and his campaign's idea to send thousands to the Capitol while the certification was underway. It was not a planned part of the rally. In fact, the permit expressly stated it did not authorize a march from the ellipse. A little more about why that's important next. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, I am reminded, and what a great thing to be reminded of, that there was a mnemonic device that would have helped me ensure that I spoke with confidence that Jean-Claude Van Damme was Belgian. He was, of course, known as the Muscles from Brussels. And fat lot of good that did me. I had a mnemonic device at my fingertips, and I forgot the mnemonic. So I need now a mnemonic for that. Here's the challenge for the day, for the year, for whatever, the rest of your lives. Can you come up with something? Had Jean-Claude Van Damme been Luxembourgish? I'm forgetting already. I'm going to go back to the text, right? But had he been from Luxembourg and therefore Luxembourgish, yes. What might you have nicknamed him? Muscles from Brussels. But what do you got? This is like basically trying to, like, it couldn't have been worse if he had been from Orange, New Jersey, because as you know, nothing rhymes with orange. Are people missing out on pointing out that nothing rhymes with Luxembourgish? I really don't know. Luxembourg alone would be very difficult to rhyme with. And by the way, maybe you think there's better material to work with. Anyone know what is the capital of Luxembourg? Yeah, and if you do know, sorry, the capital of Luxembourg is freaking Luxembourg. It's a small place. And I guess, what is it? The city of Luxembourg is, you know, so whatever. I mean, there's not a lot of land mass there, so what are you going to call it? What's the capital of Liechtenstein? Probably Liechtenstein, right? So you got no more material to work with. Are there other cities in Luxembourg? I don't even know. Cities in Luxembourg. And then it'll come back with, like, I don't understand your request. Towns? Yeah, okay. So where would he'd have to be from somewhere good? What? And you know what? It's not great rhyming material there either. Although there's a good one. Ethelbrook, which if you pronounce as an American, Ethelbrook, you could probably come up with some rhymes that work there. Vils, you could try that. I don't know how you pronounce any of these things. Yeah, they're not great rhyming places, but and also not a lot of population either. There's a whole Wikipedia list of towns in Luxembourg, so you could try it, see what you can come up with. What would he be? The mussels from Luxembourg doesn't rhyme. There's nothing that looks like it rhymes with mussels. And I'm not sure what else you'd call them. Okay, so that you could spend your time on that. It would be fun, I'm telling you. All right, more information from Mom. Its capital, Luxembourg City, is one of the 4 official capitals of the European Union, together with Brussels, Frankfurt, and Strasbourg. And what? It runs out of room for the text here, but it says it looks like the seat of the Court of Justice for the European Union is in Luxembourg. Is that right? The highest judicial authority in the EU. And they're all high if they think they have any judicial authority. Anyway, it's something you could spend the rest of your life on if you were Luxembourgish. But even then, you would be considered something of a Luxembourgish nerd, more than likely. Back here in our own country, we're going to wrap up with what Marcy had to say. It's all important stuff. I know it's a weedy, but it's exciting because it opens the door to the possibility of actually having a trial where judges and a jury will say at the end of it, yeah, Donald Trump was involved in a conspiracy to steal the election. And he's got to pay people who got hurt in this or were damaged by it, in some way other than being beaten like the cops were, that the members of Congress were put in fear of their lives. And it was wrong, and we should say so. So where were we with this? Yes, right. There was the important point of there was no permit for a march, and it was Trump that told everybody to go march. And it's interesting. I don't know whether it's better that he did plan it or didn't plan it, but it certainly puts him in trouble with local authorities. After a good deal of legal analysis after this, Meta conducts a detailed analysis of Trump's speech, focusing closely on how his call for non-violence came maybe long before an airing of Trump's false grievances and attacks on Mike Pence, leading up to calls to fight and to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I think so. Part of his defense is, in the early part of my speech, I said, we got to be peaceful. But then the later part of his speech was, oh, by the way, screw all that peace crap. Go down there and fight like hell. So it doesn't do him any good to have mouthed words about peaceful protest and then followed it up with calls to fight. And here's how the judge puts it. Having considered the president's January 6th rally speech in its entirety and in context, it took me out of context. No, I specifically read the whole context. The court concludes that the president's statements that we fight, I'll do his voice, we fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. And we're going to try and give weak Republicans, that's in brackets, the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country, immediately before exhorting rally-goers to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, are plausibly words of incitement, not protected by the First Amendment. It is plausible that those words were implicitly directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action, and were likely to produce such action. That's the Brandenburg test that we were talking about. Can you hold people liable for their speech, even though we have free speech in America? Well, you can, if the words were directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and likely to produce such an action. That's the limitation, the Brandenburg test. That is why the court determines, as discussed below, that Giuliani and Trump Jr.'s words are protected speech. But what is lacking in their words is present in the president's, an implicit call for imminent violence or lawlessness. He called for thousands, quote, to fight like hell, immediately before directing an unpermitted march to the Capitol, where the targets of their ire were at work, knowing that militia groups and others among the crowd were prone to violence. Now, Marcy wraps up. It's not just the call for violence and Trump's awareness, because of the threats leading up to January 6th, that violence was likely to result. It's also the call for a march that was not permitted, setting on foot. Please, I beg you, take a look at that. That's it. It's not even just speech or just incitement to violence. It's also the call for the march that the campaign knew was not permitted. While Mehta obviously returns to the unpermitted march over and over, he doesn't dwell on the significance of it. I will. That's not the task before him. Moreover, though he alludes in passing to Alex Jones's role, which Marcy says I may return to, that likewise is not a developed part of the complaints before him. The alleged complaints, the most recent of which was filed in March, an eternity ago in our understanding of January 6th, primarily focus on a theory of incitement. But Trump did more than that. After riling up his supporters, he told them to do something he could have permitted, but did not. March to the Capitol to confront lawmakers directly. That's very interesting. So I guess that's the first of, well, maybe the last, I don't know, of the 3 posts that she's talking about. Let's see. Was it the first or the last? I don't know. Here's the other ones available on the front page here. I guess the most recent, is this the one at the top? Judge Mehta's ruling that Donald Trump may have aided and abetted assaults on cops is more important than his conspiracy decision. And now we've switched to something else here. How Judge Mehta argued it was plausible. That's the one we just read. Which one did we start with? Then there was also, there's a lot here. Judge Mehta observes that Roger Stone's role on January 6th may prove significant in discovery. Should we read about the aiding and abetting? That sounds pretty interesting. What else do we have here? That's definitely about something else. And that's about John Durham. So, okay, I guess the other 2 completing the trio of posts about what the judge had to say are all laid out here. Which one came? So, I don't know, maybe it was the one we just read is the first one. Let's go on here to Judge Mehta's ruling that Donald Trump may have aided and abetted assaults on cops being more important than his conspiracy. Is this one also a huge read? Well, yeah, probably. But let's do a little bit of it at any rate. As I laid out here, Judge Amit Mehta, this is the other post, Judge Amit Mehta rejected Trump's motion to dismiss 3 lawsuits against him last week. Click through to the explanation for why it matters that Judge Mehta, among the most respected of D.C. judges, issued this decision. But there's another reason why it matters that Mehta issued this ruling. I was, frankly, unsurprised that Mehta ruled for plaintiffs on their claims that Trump entered into a conspiracy with 2 militias to attempt to prevent the vote for certification. I've been laying out all the evidence. Trump could be included in a conspiracy with the militias to obstruct the vote counts for some time. She loves to say that as well. And on a motion to dismiss, the judge must assume all the alleged facts were true and only tests those claims for plausibility. Mehta didn't rule that Trump did so. He just ruled that plaintiffs will have a chance to make that case. I was far more surprised, though, that Judge Mehta also ruled it plausible that Trump aided and abetted the actual and threatened physical assaults committed by the rioters. Here's how Eric Swalwell's suit argued that Trump abetted the threatened attacks on members of Congress, including Speaker Pelosi. And among the facts alleged there, many individuals in the mob either carried weapons or used objects such as poles and fire extinguishers as weapons before and after entering the building. Some individuals in the mob also carried restraints such as plastic handcuffs and rope, which wasn't really necessarily used to be a restraint, but to hang you with. But okay. The mob also unlawfully and intentionally entered non-public areas of the Capitol building, including the members' private offices. Members of the mob damaged and vandalized personal and public property and stole documents, electronics, and other items from some members' offices. The mob made its way through the Capitol building looking for members. Participants threatened to kill numerous individuals, including but not limited to Vice President Mike Pence and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. Really the whole line of succession to the presidency. Anyone who could threaten to succeed him if he were bounced out of office by impeachment, let's say. The mob terrorized and injured scores of people inside and outside the Capitol, including the plaintiff. Before directing the mob to the Capitol, the defendant instructed them to fight like hell and start taking down names and kicking ass. And that it was time for trial by combat. Yeah, you can't mistake that. The defendants intended these words to be taken literally. Trial by combat might have been Rudy Giuliani, who the judge is not holding to the same standard, or holding to the same standard, but doesn't find incited the mob the same way that Trump did. For several hours after the mob had stormed the Capitol, the defendants refused to communicate anything to the mob that might discourage continued unlawful action. The defendants knowingly and substantially assisted in the assault that was perpetrated upon the plaintiff. The defendants riled up the crowd and directed and encouraged the mob to attack the Capitol and seek out members of Congress and assault them. Here's how Capitol Police Officer Sidney Hemby described being assaulted while trying to protect the east doors of the Capitol in his lawsuit with James Blassingame. And in their filing, it says Officer Hemby ran to the east front stairs to try to stop the crowd, but it was too late and the crowd was too large and aggressive. The crowd chased him and his fellow officers to the top of the stairs and forced them against the doors. At 1:49 p.m., after Trump had returned to the White House and was reportedly watching on TV as events were unfolding at the Capitol, he tweeted out the entirety of his speech. And here it is, embedded in here, and it's the video of his speech. At 1:59 p.m., insurrectionists pushed Capitol Police to the top of the East Capitol steps, and by 2:10 p.m., insurrectionists began attempting to break into the building through the windows on the west side. Officer Henby was crushed against the doors on the east side, trying to hold the insurrectionists back. Over and over, he tried to tell the insurrectionists that the doors opened outward and that pressing him into the door would be no good, would do no good. That's pretty good. But the insurrectionists continued to scream, "Fight for Trump! Stop the steal!" and various other slogans as they struck him with their fists and whatever they had in their hands. Things were being thrown at him, and he was being sprayed with chemicals that irritated his eyes, skin, and throat. Marcy notes Judge Mehta rejected Trump's bid to dismiss those arguments, and does so this way. Next, the court takes up plaintiff's common law assault claims based on an aiding and abetting theory of liability. President Trump's motion in Swalwell's case does not separately address the aiding and abetting assault claim, but he extensively addresses it in his Blassingame motion. The court will exercise its discretion and consider those arguments in both cases. Citing Halberstam versus Welch remains the high watermark of the D.C. Circuit's explanation of aiding and abetting liability. The court there articulated two particular principles pertinent to this case. It observed that the fact of encouragement was enough to create joint liability under an aiding and abetting theory, but mere presence would not be sufficient. It also said that suggestive words may also be enough to create joint liability when they plant the seeds of action and are spoken by a person in an apparent position of authority. A position of authority gives suggestion extra weight. Applying those principles here, plaintiffs have plausibly pleaded a common law claim of assault based on an aiding and abetting theory of liability. A focus just on the January 6th rally speech without discounting plaintiffs' other allegations gets plaintiffs there at this stage. President Trump's January 6th speech is alleged to have included suggestive words that planted the seeds of action and were spoken by a person in an apparent position of authority. He was not merely present. Additionally, plaintiffs have plausibly established that had the president not urged rally-goers to march to the Capitol, an assault on the Capitol building would not have occurred, at least not on a scale that it did. That is enough to make out a theory of aiding and abetting liability at the pleading stage. President Trump contends for the first time in his Swalwell reply brief that aiding and abetting a tort is not a recognized cause of action under District of Columbia law. That argument comes too late, and the court declines to consider it. Oops, should have moved faster on that one. Marcy says, again, this is just a first step. It will be appealed. This is not a final ruling, but Mehta's decision means that both sets of plaintiffs may get a chance to hold Trump accountable for the violence attempted or committed by people who responded to the president's command to fight like hell. This part of Mehta's ruling is far more important than the conspiracy side. To understand why, consider some of the cases over which Judge Mehta is presiding, which would be what he might have in mind when he thinks of what it means that Trump may have abetted assaults. And there are several of the individual rioters' cases that are before him, like Landon Copeland, an Iraq War veteran with PTSD that has contributed to some epic meltdowns in court hearings. He traveled to D.C. on January 6th from the Four Corners region of Utah. I wonder if that's where the McDonald's was. Taking a full week off work. He said he made the trip, he told the FBI, because President Trump ordered him to be there. That's what he says. Copeland went to Trump's rally, then went with the crowd to the Capitol. He's a really big guy and is accused of several assaults at the first barricades. There's language from the cases that says so. There's also Thomas Webster, a former Marine and retired New York Police Department cop who traveled to D.C. from New York with a revolver, a bulletproof vest, and some MREs. While he claims he left the revolver in his hotel room, he wore his bulletproof vest at the rally at the Ellipse, then walked to the Capitol carrying a Marine flag. After verbally attacking one of the cops at the barricade, he pushed it over, wrestled the cop to the ground, and grabbed his helmet, seemingly, though not in fact, gouging the cop's eyes. Shane Woods, also before the judge, he drove to D.C. from Illinois on January 5th. And like the others, Woods went to the Trump rally and then walked with the crowd to the Capitol. In some of the early fighting at the west side of the Capitol, he is accused of tripping a female cop. I don't know if that's the worst thing in the world, but, it's dangerous. Then a few hours later, Woods was involved in a group attack on some media, allegedly tackling a cameraman in a similar fashion to the attack on the cop. Peter Schwartz, also involved here, a violent felon who traveled to D.C. while out on release from prison because of COVID. Schwartz is accused, along with a woman I believe to be his partner, Marcy says, of involvement in a range of assaults on cops protecting the Lower West Terrace and the tunnel on January 6th, including stealing mace from and then using it on cops and throwing a chair at them as well. On January 7th, he described his actions as being part of, quote, what happened yesterday, being the opening of a war. I was there, and whether people will acknowledge it or not, we are now at war. Who else is before Judge Mehta? The Oath Keepers. Marcy says, as I've noted repeatedly, Mehta is also presiding over the Oath Keepers trial, who all entered the East Door and therefore would be among those kitted out people who violently pushed past Sidney Hemby. A few of the Oath Keepers are individually accused of assault. For example, the video shows veteran Joshua James fighting with a cop in the rotunda, screaming, "Get out! This is my effing Capitol." Sure, but not the cops, right? You gotta get out. But members of the stack who pushed past Hemby as he was protecting the door are suspected of far more serious plans for assault. As Mehta noted in the ruling for the pretrial detention of Stuart Rhodes, the Oath Keepers leader, back on, last Friday, the same day he issued this ruling. Once the stack broke into the Capitol, they split up, with part of the group trying to make it to the Senate and other parts going to Nancy Pelosi's office. The latter is of particular concern because on Election Day, Kelly Meggs told his wife and kid that he, quote, was quote, gonna go on a killing spree, Pelosi first, unquote. That ain't gonna help you. Then, after he had gone to her office, he told someone, probably his kid again, that, quote, we looked for her. Judge Mehta has good reason to suspect, and likely knows far more about how serious this plot was, than the Oath Keepers after busting into the Capitol past Judge Mehta has good reason to suspect, and likely knows, that the Oath Keepers, after, busting into the Capitol past Hemby, took steps to hunt down Nancy Pelosi and possibly someone in the Senate, like Pence. When Judge Mehta says he thinks it is plausible that Donald Trump abetted assaults and threatened assaults at the Capitol, he's not speaking abstractly. Judge Mehta has a very specific understanding of the kinds of assaults that happened that day. Those were violent attacks on cops, several allegedly committed by military veterans and one by a retired NYPD cop. Those include a gratuitous attack on the media. It includes an attempt to hunt down the Speaker of the House. With this ruling, Trump may be on the hook for such assaults civilly, but given that the judge presiding over some spectacularly violent assaults that day has judged that Trump's actions may rise to an aid and abet standard, it may make DOJ more seriously consider Trump's exposure for such acts criminally. That is pretty interesting and exciting. I don't know that the stuff on Roger Stone is quite as interesting to us, but it's always wise to keep an eye on what's going on with Roger Stone. But perhaps we'll save that for another day, as we're coming to the end of segment 3 here, which means it's almost time to make way for Joan McCarter. We should probably spend a moment opening up her latest work and diaries so that we have them available to us. And it means I'm going to have to do this search separately. But okay. I'm trying to think of whether there are what other... Oops, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Well, let's do that one over again. Anyway, we'll get lined up with Joan's material in just a minute, and maybe I should just check Pocket here and make sure that there isn't anything super serious that I totally meant to share with you and haven't yet. Oh, yes, well, there is that, but we can save that for another day. Yeah, boy, there's an awful lot. Okay, I got to update you on what's going on in Wisconsin. I got to update you on what's going on in Florida, and there's a lot. Why don't we'll hit on two important points in Florida. One that my brother Mark shared with me that I've seen lots of people discussing and hasn't gotten enough mention on the air with us here yet, that down in Florida, the amendment to Florida's Don't Say Gay bill would force schools to out students in 6 weeks. We've heard, we haven't discussed it enough, but I've seen a lot of discussion online that you're all aware of what's going on down in Florida. But yeah, this was a new development on this. Not only are you not permitted under this new law that's proposed, I think, but not yet passed or signed into law, that basically, it's uptight people saying, I don't like all these kids who say they're gay or might be gay or aren't willing to beat up gay people. We should make that illegal. Let's go back to the old days when gay people had to hide. No more allowing people to be who they are in the schools of this country, or at least in this state. Let's see. One of the local news stations here, WRBL, is the source I have in front of me. Sam Sachs, having written this piece, a new amendment to Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay bill would explicitly require schools to inform parents of their child's sexual orientation and put a deadline on how soon they must tell the family. So forced outing to your parents, although, hopefully that won't impact a great deal of the kids there, and they've been honest with their parents, or their parents already know, or whatever, whether they've suspected it or they've had an open conversation. But clearly there are going to be some kids who are hiding it. Now, I guess teachers have to look for, look around for people you think are gay and tell the parents that they are, and, see what happens. The amendment, filed by bill sponsor Representative Joe Harding, Republican, of course, on February 18th, changes the bill to instead not only require disclosure, but requires schools to tell parents within 6 weeks of learning the student is any sexual orientation other than straight. And how do you learn that? I don't know. But maybe I don't want to. Harding originally proposed the legislation, House Bill 1557, on January 11th. Its first committee vote passed on January 20th, though there was a heated debate between supporters and opponents among the lawmakers gathered for the hearing. In the originally filed version, the bill already required schools to inform families of their child's it's just listed here, LBTQ plus status. There's no G. I don't know why they left out the G, but anyway, I think that's just a typo. Should the student inform a teacher, counselor, or other school personnel? However, it left an option for exemption from disclosure, or outing as it's known, for cases where there was a suspicion of the information leading to abuse, neglect, or abandonment. Based on the amendment's instruction, though, that safety mechanism would be removed, right? So if teachers said, if you accept the premise that, well, this is a fairly serious thing, and we found out as a teacher, and we really should inform the parents, even if you thought that there was some good intention behind it. Now, your ability to say, if the kid says, listen, if my parents find out, my dad will kill me, literally kill me. Sorry, we're going to tell them anyway. That's great. So it's essentially like removing those the traditional abortion protections, like protecting the right to an abortion in the case of rape, incest, or the life of the mother. Now all that being dumped from abortion laws. Likewise here, if your life is in danger from our telling your parents about your sexual orientation, too bad. You're just going to have to deal with it. So that isn't likely to go over very well or make any particular sense for things down in Florida. I'll just mention quickly also, there's another story from out of Florida that the governor there now seeking to do what Glenn Youngkin had originally threatened here in Virginia, that schools that defied the no mask mandate in Florida now stand to see their funding stripped. The Guardian reported this the other day, and he's making good on this threat and providing a template for, what's-his-face, Glenn Youngkin, to do that here in Virginia. Florida governor says school districts that defied the no-mask mandate will lose $200 million in funding. DeSantis is backing a bill that would strip education funding from Democratic counties that retained COVID precautions, because he's not the governor of the entirety of Florida. Screw the rest of you. It's time for some funding problems in Democratic Florida. We'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is ready and with us and ready to roll here. We were just talking about, again, the fact that, the government got the funding that it needed to continue, but it's a non-story, not only because they did it quietly, but you were making the good point that this is becoming a little bit too routine, perhaps, and the fact that the government is constantly teetering on the edge of shutdown, and at any moment, some lunatic who's just more insistent about crack pipes could close the place. But we've been funding the government for far too long this way, and for years it's kind of become the norm to just limp along through a couple of CRs before you get around to a budget. That's not good.
Well, 2 years worth of CRs.
Yeah.
I mean, we are still functioning on a 2020, FY20, right? No, 21. It was passed in 2020.
Yeah.
But, that was mid-COVID.
Yeah.
Without any indication of how long COVID was going to last. It was
right.
Pre-Russia invasion of Ukraine. It was pre-infrastructure bill. If it hadn't been for the American Rescue Plan passing, outside of what, the regular funding for government was, we would be in really, really bad shape right now.
I guess that's
because
true.
we are operating on an old budget.
Yeah. And it's just not geared for the changing situation. You're supposed to do a budget every year because things change from time to time. You can't just...
The Pentagon is still funding the war in Afghanistan because that's what the money was.
Yes, it is.
And they've got, $3 billion or something there that is tied up that they can't change because they're still operating under that old budget. So the war in Afghanistan is still funded. Whatever we might have to respond to in Ukraine.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could redefine it. I guess if that's what we should do. We recognize the independence of the eastern provinces of Ukraine also, except our name for it is Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
So,
yeah.
There you go.
We might declare them republics today. We can declare them Afghanistan.
Right. Yeah. That's just your version of the story. Our version is that it's Afghanistan. We're not going to invade it, but we got a lot of money that could be spent there, and we're going to move it. And, we did that on purpose because we know you Russians hate having to fight wars in Afghanistan, even more than we do. But, okay, maybe it might just turn them around, or it might just free up the money. Yeah, that's kind of weird, right? Billions of dollars in this budget. I mean, I imagine they're not being, released from the Treasury and used, but That's an indication of how long it's been since we've been able to write a new budget.
Right.
Wow.
And how constrained most of the agencies are in where they can direct money, including Department of Transportation. All of that infrastructure money, they can't spend it all. Congress said, yeah, sure, here's our great big new infrastructure plan, but the agencies don't have the funding to actually spend with the states and localities on infrastructure right now.
Right.
So a lot of states are trying, because summer's coming, for the northern tier states, this is when they have to do all of the road work.
And they're not going to be ready.
They're trying to plan on it, and the Department of Transportation is saying, well, we think you'll have this much money, but
got to have a budget first. That's interesting.
You got to have a budget.
Now I feel like I'm now envisioning, me talking to, grandchildren in the future. Hey, Grandpa, why are all these towns in the Midwest and all these bridges named Afghanistan? It's an interesting story. And it's a procedural one, kids. Sit down. Maybe that's it. So now all the Afghanistan bridge over the various rivers in the Midwest, and new states that will rename themselves Afghanistan. Ron DeSantis, you might want to get on that. So there'll be lots of money tied up, and then all this stuff. We might have reprogrammed that or some other dollars to fund all these things. Remember that all of this it's a two-part process. You got to authorize the programs, which they did, and then you got to actually appropriate the money for it and deal with it in the budget. And I guess if you don't do it, the dollars might actually exist. They just can't be moved into these projects.
And also the policies change budget to budget. So
true. Also,
the Afghanistan war is one thing. Here's this money earmarked for this set of policy purposes, and it's constrained to those sets of policy purposes, and this is true across the agencies.
Yeah, that's really wild, and that's the sort of thing that makes people lose. Well, it makes them angry about the way the stupid government. Why can't they? Everybody knows the Afghanistan war is over. Don't leave the money just sitting there because it's designated for Afghanistan. Well, we're ruled by the rule of law here, and the law currently says that what this money is for. We could get together and decide it was for something else. That's what we're supposed to do, but we can't. And every time we run out of time, even if we wanted to change something, some idiot will try and make us hold us hostage to the crack pipe story anyway. So
right, it's just phenomenally irresponsible and irrational and nuts. It's just nuts that this is how government is being run right now, with how many crisis points we've got, and it's not the story. It's just not the story, because this is just how it works.
Yeah. By the way, man, I'm thinking of changing my name to Afghanistan now. As I'm thinking about this more and more, there's got to be something I can do with this. I'm going to become a non-fungible token named Afghanistan. Somehow I'm going to make $1 million on this. But, that's real. That's what a great point. I never thought of that. And we're not doing anything to correct it either. Not yet.
Not really. I mean, you don't necessarily expect government to be nimble.
No.
Because it's huge.
Yeah, but you see
this is ridiculous.
This
is just ridiculous.
That's pretty crazy. I imagine, there's some authority that President Biden might be able to exercise in reprogramming it, but only a small slice of it. The presidential authority to do that is limited by to some percentage of these funds. So it'll take legislation to reprogram those dollars and move them out of the Afghanistan budget and into other things, and they're not writing that legislation, and in order to get a piece of legislation like that through means not a filibuster but a vote-a-rama, certainly. And that means about 85 crack pipe amendments or more.
Well, and what the latest I saw from Republican leadership was, we can deal with Ukraine in a supplemental.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah.
we're going to have a continuing resolution again, maybe
Great.
on March 11th, and a supplemental for Ukraine, and still perhaps not pass the omnibus bill. March 11th is the new deadline, by the way.
Yes. Right, okay. I read that last night, so we're up to speed on that part of it. Yeah, so, all right, they might take care of part of it piecemeal, and maybe the supplemental could have do some of the work of reprogramming former Afghanistan money into Ukraine. I don't know, but I don't know. It also depends on Republicans being on what would maybe traditionally have been considered the American side in a conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and we're not certain that they are.
We are not at all certain they are, and I don't know that they're certain where they necessarily stand on this.
Yeah.
We've seen Ted Cruz, and I'm not sure where Ted Cruz has been coming from, but he's focused on the pipeline. Mm-hmm. The what's it called?
Nord Stream or something?
Nord Stream, something like that.
Yeah, not Nordstrom, the department store.
Right. He's been focusing on that and trying to put sanctions on that. And whether he's, intending to hurt Germany or Russia is not entirely clear to me.
Yeah.
But, I think the rest of them are trying to figure out whose side they're on.
Yeah, it's not clear.
Tuckers and Trumps, or the rest of the world.
They don't have a great record on Ukraine, any of them. And, going even further back, I was thinking about the various dumb things that Republicans have done with the Ukraine crisis and how many times they've ignored it. And not only, the issue that got Trump impeached the first time and trying to trade the ability of Ukraine to defend itself from invasion for political favors. But even before then, when McCarthy made his infamous joke about Putin paying Trump, that whole conversation was originally about, the Ukrainian prime minister came and told us how terrible things are and what the Russians are doing in Ukraine, and that the rest of Eastern Europe may be doomed. But anyway, Trump gets paid by Putin, and Anyway, let's keep it all secret. Because then if we do, we can win the election, because the Russians will help us. We might lose Ukraine, but who cares? And then even before that, or I guess right after that, right, because they had the Republican convention then came up, and Trump had no platform except to change the part about the Ukraine, right?
Right.
Mysteriously weird thing. The one thing he had to say was, we need to make it a matter of policy that Republicans don't want to defend Ukraine. Okay. And they did it.
Okay. And they did it.
It became the official platform, and I guess it hasn't changed because there was no platform in 2020 either. So, like our budgets, it never got changed. It's still the official Republican position that Russia is invited to take over Ukraine, and we're going to do nothing about it. Anybody who says to the contrary, who's a member of the Republican Party, is a rhino and should be kicked out.
And January 6th was legitimate political discourse.
That too.
Speaking of which, Have you seen Rick Scott's agenda?
No.
This is pretty terrifying.
Oh, weird. Okay.
So Mitch McConnell had decided that, and Mitch McConnell being, the supposed leader of the Republican Party, had decided that he wasn't going to release any kind of agenda for this midterm election because it was much simpler to just run against Biden. And, he's got inflation, he's got gas prices, he's got COVID continuing, the mask and vaccine fights, all of that. McConnell was fine to just let Republicans keep needling on that stuff and run on that for the midterms. And Rick Scott decided, nope, can't do that. Let's have an agenda. Rick Scott is the head of the NRSC. He is running the election campaigns, or, deciding where the money goes and who gets the support for retaking the Senate in 2022. And he's got his own policy agenda now that he just released, and it is pretty darn terrifying.
Huh.
I mean, it's full on fascist.
I mean, so not surprising, but
White
I'm surprised that he
supremacist,
released one.
eliminationist. It's, there are
Look.
two genders and we will recognize nothing else.
As a matter of Senate policy. Okay, I mean, bad. Yeah.
Humans are born male and female. There are two genders, and to deny that is to deny science, is one of his points.
Oh, the science
No
thing. Now they wanted to
government
do that.
forms will include questions about gender identity or sexual preference.
Yes, they will. They'll ask you for Mr. or Mrs. I know.
Of course, critical race theory is in there. And
Sure.
Remember when abolishing the Department of Education was a fringe idea?
Yeah, a while ago, but
Yeah, it's not. Abolishing
No?
the Department of Education is here.
Yeah, Betsy DeVos is done
It's
with
in
it.
the document, as is sending kids' public school money to private religious schools. That's
great.
all fine with. So that's just education. The thing that's probably most, all of it. This is really scary. Socialism, which Democrats and liberals are, socialism will be treated as a foreign combatant which aims to destroy our prosperity and freedom.
The final
Which
fruition
is
of the
pretty much, liberals.
Yeah.
You can be imprisoned or assassinated because you're a
great.
foreign combatant.
the final form of the final fruition of the Patriot Act. What everybody, remember, more dirty hippies saying you could use this. Republicans could use this to simply outlaw Democrats and liberals and throw them in jail. Oh, come on, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
What was it? 10 years? That's all it took. Okay. 20, I guess, for Patriot Act. So glacial pace.
No government assistance unless you are disabled or aggressively seeking work.
All right. I mean, that's a typical Republican position. But
Typical Republican, but
Yeah.
Are we going to have Social Security anymore?
no, people shoot themselves in the feet.
The IRS will be cut by another 50%. So, to fund the tax police, not the other police, but the tax police.
Right. The ones who catch us.
And, of course, fair, fraud-free elections. We will protect the integrity of American democracy and stop left-wing efforts to rig elections. So,
And arrest Democrats at the same time.
yeah.
So, that should go over pretty big. It fits their candidate profiles anyway.
Yes.
He's read his constituency correctly.
All Americans, here's Mitt Romney and his 47%. All Americans should pay some income tax to have skin in the game, even if a small amount.
Well, use the skin in his
and
head.
then the one that's just nutso,
Yeah.
all laws will sunset after 5 years.
Okay. Battery operated laws that just simply
Battery operated, they sunset after 5 years, and there is a 12-year term limit on everybody in the government, including all employees.
So a constitutional amendment is what he's proposing, or just
I would guess so. So every member of Congress has has limited to 12 years, as is every federal employee.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know what that means for judges.
Yeah. I didn't think about that. Go away. Stop. Well, maybe for them too. Who knows? They love appointing judges. That might be very exciting for them. It would take a constitutional amendment to do it, but I don't know. I guess it's only 50-50 that he realized that and proposed it as a constitutional amendment, but he might have. A long shot, to be sure, but okay, so pie in the sky, some of this stuff. But that's interesting. 12-year term limit for everybody in government, so you can only, be a postal carrier for 12 years, or is that now quasi-governmental?
Yeah, I don't think he probably thought this one all the way through.
Yeah, probably not. Okay. It's going to be tough to make general in the Army in 12 years. That's true, also. I probably didn't think about all that. Maybe they're exempted from that, because we love the Army. We're not in it, but we love it. And That could that's an interesting and aggressive agenda that doesn't make any sense. Perfect for Senate candidates for the Republican Party.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just, you have to look at this whole thing. It is really quite terrifying. We will make it a federal crime for any prosecutor, including the U.S. Department of Justice, to pursue prosecution based on political ideology. Well, of course, that's not happening, but you know what that means. If you try to prosecute Trump.
Yeah, that'll be the thing.
We'll execute you.
I guess so. Boy, we could have used that back when they were replacing all of the U.S. attorneys, unless they would prosecute people for the non-existent voter fraud. Boy, a lot of heads would have rolled if we had only had that law then. But don't worry about it. All the laws will only last 5 years, which means they can execute you while there's a Republican president who would sign this thing. And then, if it's so unpopular that they lose and Democrats come in, the law goes away after 5 years. And tough luck. We all get to get away with it. Oh, crap. What a great design that is. Okay.
By the way, it is embraced by Ronna McDaniel, GOP chairwoman. Republicans like Senator Scott for Florida have real solutions to put us back on track.
Yeah. That's interesting, though. Yeah. By the way, in the middle of another government shutdown threatened 2 years' worth of CRs, the idea of all laws sunsetting in 5 years. We'll get around to reauthorizing them, sure. That's really something. Okay, well, you just got to time all of your criming right. And every 5 years, wasn't there a show about that where one day out of every year you can do whatever you want? Now every 5 years.
There was, yeah.
And once every 5 years.
Wanted get up for, yeah.
Free for all. And it might last another 5 years until they get around to reauthorizing things. You know how it is in Congress. Like, they never did fix that one about, telemarketing fraud, so we're just going to continue doing that. Well, that'd be interesting to deal with, right? You just have omnibus bills that just say everything that was a law last year is a law now for the next 5 years. Yes or no? Okay, so CRs for the entire U.S. code.
Pretty much. I mean, This is the only good part about it. It really is scary. It's ridiculous and silly, and it's also very terrifying because this is where the Republican Party is right now. But at least it's going to give Mitch McConnell some more ulcers.
Yeah, I guess so. Wow.
There's always a bright side.
I can't imagine this whole thing, by the way. Yeah, now I'm thinking about reauthorizing the entire U.S. code in one bill for 5 years. I'm thinking, I'm glad Herman Cain isn't alive to see this. What an outrage. It was his thing, right? That all bills had to be, what was it? Like 3 pages? 9 pages? There was a nine thing that he did. Yeah. I don't know whether that was 9 pages or not, but he certainly was against the gigantic, but I guess the bill itself could only be one sentence. It just, incorporates the entire U.S. code by reference. Weird. That's not a great plan, but it will probably work in the era of campaign buses that say Jesus, guns, babies, for instance. I don't know if she's not running for Senate. She's a gubernatorial candidate, whatever her name was. Have you seen that photo? What was her name?
Have not seen that photo.
Oh, gosh.
Jesus, guns, babies.
Yeah, that's the bus.
Man, woman, camera, TV.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's the slogan. What was her name? Candace something. I think she's a Georgia gubernatorial candidate. It stuck with me that her name was Candace because it's spelled Kandiss with a smiley face over the I think.
Of course it is.
Could have been a heart. I didn't look that closely. But yeah, that was at the side of the bus. Jesus, guns, babies. I'm not really sure what the babies part is. I imagine it's an abortion thing, but why explain anything, I say. Wow. Well, man. And you thought you had it bad in Idaho. Yeah. Goodness, that's quite a bit to take in. And, I guess Mitch McConnell at this point just says, I'll see what we get out of it, We'll see what happens when people get here.
He's got to see what we get out of it. He's going to get a lot of crazy Republicans that he has got to try to figure out what to deal with.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see whether they allow him to remain or whether he wants to remain as majority leader. He must want to, but
I think he probably wants to, except that he has these people to deal with.
yeah.
I mean, and on top of that, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz.
It got worse. I can't believe it. Yeah, they'll be the moderates. That's something.
If Ron Johnson makes it back again, it
Yeah,
is possible
he might be
Wisconsin can boot him. I really hope so.
They're working hard to be able to reverse all the elections there in Wisconsin. I don't think they're focused on the Senate ones, but their activity...
Probably because Wisconsin Republicans were not... they might be okay with getting rid of Ron Johnson because he's kind of a liability.
Yeah. They all probably want to move up. Get rid of the old guy. Sure. That's... he's not been great for people believing that they have their heads screwed on right in Wisconsin Republican Party. That's true. Well,
No,
man.
he's not a good advertisement for, well, anything.
No, but there's no getting through to that guy. All right, so let's see. With March 11th as the new deadline, that gives us a little bit of time.
Yeah, they're out
come
until
back
the
and work.
28th.
Okay, so
I
not a
don't
lot.
know if they come back if they're not back now because of Russia's invasion, then they probably are not going to cut this short and come back at all. So,
Yeah, I'm not certain whether they've been summoned back.
a chunk of them actually were in Munich at a security conference over the weekend. So, have been kind of working on this.
They would be aware.
We don't know what's going to be the outgrowth from that.
All right.
And the chances are it's going to be a supplemental. Remember all those supplementals we
Yeah.
kept fighting back in the day?
Yeah, it's one of their favorite, ways of dealing with things. If you're not going to get around to a real budget, and they wouldn't be at that point now anyway, you'd still be a long way off. So a supplemental will make some sense just to have some quick answer. But yeah, I don't know what they're going to do if they don't. We don't even know whether Republicans are. I guess they don't have to be unified. We can just take a couple of them. If it provided Democrats are of a mind to do something about the situation, and I think that they are. You could find 10
I think that they
Republicans who
will
would
be.
agree. And
It's very strange how this is playing out.
yeah, I don't feel like any of the Republicans who even would cast themselves as opposed to it are up to the task of filibustering anything, with the possible exception of Rand Paul, who likes to insert himself in these sorts of affairs.
Any troops that we deploy to Ukraine can only be paid if we make sure they don't have crack pipes.
Yeah, something like that. He'll find something like that. But then, what will that leave for Marco Rubio? He has to be a copycat somehow. I was talking about that earlier in the show, that just as Blackburn dropped her stunt over crack pipes, he decided, I haven't done it yet.
He had to pick it back up.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not the crack pipes, it's the tube that...
The crack pipe holder.
I actually had to watch that.
Oh, I'm sorry. But that
And
must
it's been really interesting to watch Rubio with the fact he's been trying to tweet as Rubio the foreign policy wonk the last few days, and it's been really amusing to watch.
Yeah, well, he probably wants to escape.
Remember back when Rubio was going to be the great white hope for the Republican Party?
Yeah, the serious guy.
The serious
Wonk.
guy who knows his foreign policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work out, although it must have been somewhat entertaining to watch him on the floor standing there doing his, I can't believe nobody's going to help me with the crack pipes. Yeah, that's right, Marco.
Nobody helped him with crack pipes.
Nobody
No.
wants to help you. But this is a perfect situation. How I never would have imagined that Republicans wouldn't join me in outrage over crack pipes. Marco, it is late. We want to get out of here.
Oh, and I missed the part. We didn't talk about the part how they used another trick. Republicans did their favorite. let's just send some members away so none of the crazy amendments we're putting up can actually pass.
Oh.
They did that again.
Okay. So that's a good idea of handling those things. You send them on errands.
Just make sure that we don't have enough votes to pass this stuff that will shut down government. But we'll still put it up because, we're Republicans.
Yeah, well, we got it up there, and it was just for show. And I guess now I'm glad you did squeeze that in, because now that gives me an idea of maybe how Mitch McConnell plans to deal with the Rick Scott agenda if he's handed a majority. You could just find ways to send people on a goodwill tour of Africa, like from the movie Dave. Okay, great. Well, now we have a preview of what the hell's going to happen next Congress. Should we be so unfortunate as to lose control of the Senate to a bunch of weirdos? It is possible. Mitch McConnell gets a migraine, and I guess we all get to watch. But thanks for bringing us up to date.
Well, the one thing that it could mean is that we don't see filibuster reform under McConnell, because he isn't going to want this stuff passed.
Yeah, there you go. Right, and I guess we'll be content with it for the time being, too. So, ugh. All right, well, I hope it never comes to that and they never gain control and none of their crazies win in the Senate, but, if wishes were horses, whatever happens with horses would happen. Okay, I don't know what that is. Thank you, Joan. We'll catch up again next week.
Thanks, Kagro. Talk to you
From
next week.
NetworksRadio.com. You've
she knows
been
what
listening
happens
to
with
Kagro
She's
in the
might
morning.
You ride them around and have a good time. All right, speaking of riding around and having a good time, you don't have to ride far, because Justice Putnam will bring you the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy without even so much as getting out of your chair. Of course, we'll be discussing what's going on in Ukraine and Putin's crazy speech, but lots more from around this country and around the rest of the world. Stay tuned.